I was detained for just short of 2 months after a right-wing group filed charges against me for participating in demonstrations. They framed it as assaulting soldiers and police officers. And I was jailed because I refused to cooperate with the Israeli justice system.
As an Israeli citizen, you could have avoided your detention by paying a small bail. Why did you refuse?
I refused to pay bail because I believe the justice system is illegitimate and unjust. We have two separate systems of law, things that even apartheid South Africa didn't have. So if I'm arrested together with a Palestinian comrade at the same demonstration in the West Bank under the same circumstances, same charges, I will be brought in front of an Israeli judge, a normal Israeli judge, and the Palestinian will be brought in front of a military judge. I will have to be brought before the court within 24 hours, the Palestinian within 96 hours. The whole system is different and not equal.
What about your ongoing criminal probe for incitement to terror?
On the day that I was arrested, an article was published in my name calling on Israelis, basically calling on Israelis to join Palestinian resistance, and it mentioned the children of stones and Molotov cocktails. And it said explicitly that Israelis should not try and lead and set the terms of Palestinian resistance. The children of stones and Molotov cocktails are the most basic consensus of Palestinian resistance. And saying that we need to follow them is basically saying Israelis should join Palestinian resistance under Palestinian terms.
What have you been protesting in Palestine, Israel?
For the last 20 years or so, I've been participating in Palestinian organized demonstrations against Israeli colonialism to try and support the Palestinian struggle and resist Israeli apartheid.
Do you hold a sense of belonging to Israel?
I grew up in Israel, but nowadays it is hard for me to relate to myself as Israeli or to this place as Israel as anything but an epitome of injustice. The only sense of belonging I have to this place is through resisting its policies and practices of repression and colonialism.
Where on the left are you?
That's a hard question to answer because I don't know what the scale of left is. I can tell you what my opinions are. I'm an anti-Zionist. I see Zionism as a colonial movement, and I support the Palestinian liberation movement as any other liberation movement.
Zionist left versus anti-Zionist left.
I think it's a lot of it is a question of perspective. The Zionist left usually views the conflict starting from 67, as something going wrong starting with 67, and mostly from within the perspective of Israeli society, while anti-Zionists go much further back and see the situation as a classic colonial situation and figuring out way for going forward towards decolonization and fighting against the current situation.
Co-resistance with Palestinians. Do you think it can be effective?
I think joining Palestinian resistance is the least that Israelis could and should do while accepting the terms Palestinians set. It really is a Palestinian decision of how and whether they want Israelis joining. For me, it has been the most effective way I can think of trying to face colonialist realities in Palestine.
For some Palestinians, living in Israel doesn't match with the fact of being anti-Zionist activist. What do you say?
Well, all Israelis obviously benefit from occupation and colonialism. There's no way around it. So I can definitely see aspects of that point of view. Having said that, I don't really see any other realistic option for me right now other than joining Palestinian resistance in whatever way possible and using my relative privilege to try and combat the system.
Your hope for Palestine, Israel?
Well, I'm an anarchist, but in the shorter term, I believe that the best solution is one democratic state with measures for decolonialism, including a return of the refugees, of course, land reforms, everything around that. I don't think we can just say, okay, we stop here and the situation stays as it is, and we call it quits. We have 100 years of injustice to amend. But again, this is a colonialist situation, and how to decolonialize is a Palestinian decision that I can only take part in, not lead.
Israel, in a few words.
Israel for me is the realization that no matter where you were born or how you were born, there are some truths that you need to unlearn and learn again, and see different sides of it. It's the realization that one of the most important things that a dissident can do is cross borders, not looking back. Israel for me is today the target of resistance.